As iconic as Guts' character design is, it wouldn't be complete without a certain flesh wound on his body that links his current existence to his morbid past. No, we're not talking about his missing right eye, which was put out during the eclipse by one of Griffith's apostles. No, we're not talking about his missing left arm, which was also taken during that same event. No, we're not even referring to the patch of white hair that has become a part of his anatomy since he first wore the Berserker armor. We're talking about the Bluetooth-shaped brand seared onto his neck right next to his jugular vein. That's right, folks, it's time to talk about the Brand of Sacrifice, one of the most iconic symbols in dark fantasy manga history. The Brand of Sacrifice is the source of Guts' daily agony, but also his only ally in his hunt for the God Hand. It looks small, but it serves a purpose much greater than itself. But what exactly is this brand? How does one get it? And what happens to them once they do? We'll answer all those questions and more in this video. This is the Brand of Sacrifice Explored. It's a symbol of the damned whose only superpower is making lives miserable. What makes the Brand of Sacrifice different from other anime symbols? Symbols with secret meanings and hidden powers aren't exactly a new concept in the world of anime. More often than not, though, they function more as calling cards, identifiers, or power boosters in some cases, which also draw an exorbitant cost from the user. For example, if you were a player participating in the game Sword Art Online, the laughing coffin symbol would send you into an immediate state of panic, because it's the calling card of the Red Guild, a clan of players who kill Sword Art Online players within the game, and therefore, real life as well. These players also enjoy torturing their victims before murdering them, which is signified in the laughing coffin symbolism that encases a skeletal hand within it. In the Full Metal Alchemist franchise, the Ouroboros symbol found on the bodies of the 7 incarnations of human sin within the series are actually signifiers that identify them as artificial humans, aka homunculi. The symbol itself is actually a pretty layered one, as it not only signifies the immense strength of each individual homunculus, but it also represents their immortal nature. The Ouroboros symbol in FMA shows a winged dragon eating its own tail. The dragon symbolizes destructive strength, while the serpent eating its own tail is a motif that is associated with eternal cycles across various world myths. And finally, we have the cursed seals from the Narutoverse, which empower their bearers with immense strength and physical transformations, but at the cost of carrying a piece of Orochimaru's soul within them for as long as they have the cursed seal. The power output of a cursed seal depends on the type of cursed seal you have placed on your body. For instance, the character Kimimaru had a cursed seal of heaven, which wasn't exactly the most powerful of the cursed seals, but combined perfectly with his clan's innate techniques and thus gave rise to a transformed state where he could turn his bones into a friggin' drill and grow a vertebrae-like tail as well. By contrast, Sasuke Uchiha receives the cursed seal of heaven, which allows him to manifest hand-like wings while boosting his chakra output to insane levels. Both Kimimaru and Sasuke were chosen as vessels to host the soul of Orochimaru at a later point in time, and while both turn out to be failures in that regard, you can understand the give-and-take relationship that's going on here. I give you power, you give me your body, and the rest of your life as well, please and thank you. The Brand of Sacrifice loosely fits the 3 categories we've mentioned, but at its core, it is representative of none of them. The Brand of Sacrifice is a calling card of the God Hand, because the moment you see Void fire up that metaphysical poker, you know something's about to get sacrificed. It's an identifier in that those who have it are identified as offerings to the God Hand's enigmatic master, and it's a power booster in a non-conventional sense, because if you've got the Brand of Sacrifice, trust you me, a horde of powerful, vengeful, and bloodthirsty astral creatures are going to be underneath your bed tonight. But the reason why this brand is not part of your conventional anime symbolism is because, well, it quite literally only brings misfortune upon the person who has it, along with blinding pain that causes it to bleed like an open wound. Considering how much time Guts has spent on a boat as of late, that certainly can't be safe for his well-being. Yet that's exactly why the Brand of Sacrifice exists within the series. Nothing about it is meant to make Guts stronger or more courageous or even reveal some kind of hidden lineage of his. Everything about it is to make him weaker, exhaust him to the brink of death, and then claim his body and soul to power up demonkind in the Berserkverse. The Brand of Sacrifice is quite literal in its name, which is a rarity in a medium that often tries to get too esoteric with its fantasy elements, but that still doesn't explain how it works within the series, just that it's unique for what it is. Fear not, we're just about to get into those details. What is the brand of sacrifice? How does one acquire it? Let's start off by answering the basic questions about the brand of sacrifice first. What is it, and can anybody get one? Is it like the assassin symbol that someone secretly brands onto your ring finger to signify your membership in a discreet yet elite circle of freedom fighters? Is it like a slave tattoo that shows a person's rank and place in society as a piece of property? Or is it just a very cool design idea that Kentaro Miura just had to fit in somewhere into his story? Well, the brand of sacrifice can actually be called pretty much the reason Berserk even exists. As we mentioned earlier, the brand of sacrifice is named quite literally. It's a brand that is put onto a sacrificial offering, which in the case of Berserk just so happens to be human beings. The brand of sacrifice is shaped like a jagged Bluetooth-esque symbol in the final series, but in the prototype of Berserk, its shaping was rounder, more like an inverted fleur-de-lis. Either way, both versions are meant to signify that the person bearing the brand is supposed to be a sacrificial offering. And how does one get to that point in their lives where they end up becoming lambs for the slaughter? Not by choice, we'll tell you that much. The brand of sacrifice isn't some sort of species-exclusive deal like the homunculi's Ouroboros. Any person, as long as they meet the requirements for being eligible for having it, can get it. The only problem with that is those requirements are often hidden and out of their control, because they're being controlled by the concept of fate itself in Berserk, which the manga calls causality. Everything on Earth has a cause and an effect, and the effect of being put up as a sacrificial offering for demonkind is that you get the brand of sacrifice burnt into your skin. But what's the cause? The cause is what answers how does one get it, because the reason people get slapped with the brand in the first place is because they have someone in their lives that they're terribly attached to, but they've horribly misjudged. This person is like a part of the sacrificed human soul, which is what makes the entire ordeal of getting branded with it such a bone-chilling experience in the first place. You cannot get the brand of sacrifice unless someone betrays your deepest confidence and trades you in for power. But what are the mechanics of this trade, and how much power are we talking about here? Who gives a person the brand of sacrifice and why? How does the ritual work? The brand of sacrifice is a symbol that's closely associated with demons and evil in the world of Berserk, so it only makes sense that it is branded into people's flesh by an entity that pretty much represents evil in this world. There are a few prerequisites when it comes to receiving it though, the first of which is a Behelit and a person destined to use it. If you don't know how the Behelit is connected to this video, we suggest you go and check out what it's all about by going to our Berserk playlist, which also has other cool content that you can explore later. What's important for this video is the fact that these two things are crucial when it comes to the brand of sacrifice, because unless the owner of the Behelit doesn't activate it in exchange for power, the brand doesn't come into play. The brand of sacrifice is essentially the seal that represents the deal for power in exchange for one's soul has been finalized. A Behelit is only activated when its owner reaches their most helpless state in life. At that point, their despair knows no bounds and their only desire is to escape their current lives. They crave the power to make their ideal lives a reality, and this brings forth the Guardian Angels of Desire, the 4 members of the God Hand. Well, 5 after Femto joins them, but we'll get to that in a bit. The God Hand uses its immense power and near omniscient nature to entice the owner of the Behelit into accepting the evil in their hearts as their true nature. Once they do so, the God Hand tells the person that they must sever all their human bonds to the world by making a sacrifice, which is where the brand comes into play. The other members of the God Hand mostly focus on manipulating their target with words and promises, while Void fires up the metaphysical poker to perform a ritual within a ritual called the Invocation of Doom. This invocation begins with the choice of ascending to demonkind being posed to the God Hand summoner and ends when they inadvertently accept. Once this happens, Void sends the floating brand of sacrifice into the flesh of the sacrificed, marking them as sacred offerings for demonkind. These sacrifices, as we mentioned earlier, need to be so close to the person giving them up that it's as if they define their very humanity. This is why most of the time the sacrifices are people close to the Behelit owner, like their siblings, family members, partners, or close friends. Once you've been seared with the brand of sacrifice, that's pretty much game over for you as a living physical entity. Anyone that's even remotely familiar with the concept of a sacrifice knows that it needs to be devoured by something to be considered complete. Mere killing is not enough, because what the brand of sacrifice does is essentially links the flesh and soul of the sacrificed to the person making the sacrifice. The lives of those who bear the brand, from the last drop of blood to the last moment of their agonizing death, are used as nourishment for the people who sacrifice their lives. What this basically means is that the sacrificed people end up being cannibalized by their former loved one because the consumption process is what strengthens them as a reincarnated apostle. We have seen evidence of this with the Slugcount's ascension, where his first act as an apostle is to devour his sacrificed wife, bit by Grisly Bit. Once the sacrifice has been completed, the target of the ritual is reborn as an agent of evil in the world. The physical body of their sacrifice becomes a power source for their current one, and the greater the demon it becomes, the more they have to sacrifice. For standard apostles, the sacrifice ritual can involve anything from one offering, as was the case with the Slugcount, or multiple offerings, as was the case with Grunbeld the Flame Dragon Knight. There doesn't seem to be a cap on how many people are sacrificed as apostles, as 3 is the highest number we've seen so far, and the reason for that could be that the people right above them in the hierarchy need a lot more to get to their level. In order to become a god hand, a person not only needs the Crimson Behelit, not a regular Behelit, they also need to be in some sort of position of power over their loved ones, because the sacrifices required for that scale of power is just far greater in number. For example, Griffith becomes Femto after giving up the Band of the Falcon, which numbered somewhere between 100 to 300 people at the time of the eclipse. It's been hinted that Void sacrificed the entire capital city of King Gyseric to get his powers, because we've seen evidence for the same scattered throughout the series. To put it simply, there's strength in numbers, and the more you sacrifice, the greater a demon you become, and the more people end up becoming branded with the brand of sacrifice. But that's up to causality, which brings us to the next part of our explainer. Why is Guts having the brand of sacrifice a unique situation? Now, under usual circumstances, the brand of sacrifice is the last thing a person has done to them before they are devoured as ritual sacrifices for demon kind. But as you guys might have noticed, Guts has been walking around with one right next to his jugular for almost the entirety of Berserk. So how is that possible? Well, to put it simply, Guts is one of only 2 people to have witnessed a demonic ritual and lived to tell the tale. The other person is his girlfriend, Casca, who was right under his hanging unconscious body when the 2 of them were rescued by the Skull Knight. Under normal circumstances, by the time Griffith's eclipse ended, all of the Band of the Falcon would be inside of him, acting as a fuel source for his new and improved body. But although 2 vital cells managed to get away from him, it doesn't look like it's had too much of an adverse effect on Griffith's powers. As Femto, he now possesses divine control over the very concept of space, and can view the current of causality to a degree that's unimaginable for even the greatest of great gurus from Elfhelm. Guts, on the other hand, is now being forced to deal with the troubles of not 1, but 2 worlds at the same time, with the second one being far more lethal than the first. Any person that manages to survive their branding is no longer a proper human being. The brand of sacrifice doesn't simply run skin deep, it's an evil symbol that engraves itself onto a person's astral body, which exists within the spirit realm, aka the astral world. If a person survives their branding, it makes them a multi-dimensional being in a sense, because from that day forward, they reside within the interstice. The interstice is the shallow layer between the physical and astral worlds, where commingling is frequent, and many spirit creatures like elves, trolls, ogres, unicorns, kelpies, and the vengeful spirits of those who died unsatisfied with life reside. As residents of this shallow layer, Guts and Casca are exposed to troubles from both the physical and the astral world, because the brand of sacrifice is like a lighthouse for ships on a stormy night, except those ships are trying to either take over the lighthouse's body for themselves or kill it and send it on its merry way to the underworld. Guts' situation is unique because while Casca managed to stay safe within Godot's elf magic cave for 2 years, he was out in the world actively hunting apostles, whilst exploiting the brand of sacrifice's drawbacks to his own advantage. For example, whenever the brand comes into the vicinity of evil or powerful astral creatures, it reacts by itching, bleeding, or causing full-on mind-numbing pain to the branded individual. However, the intensity of this depends. Low-level astral creatures like incubi only cause the brand to hurt Guts like a bruise. If apostles are nearby, the brand starts bleeding as well, which Guts uses as an apostle radar during his hunt, as morbid as it is. And if he's in the presence of a God Hand member, the brand gushes blood and causes such pain that anyone besides Guts would immediately pass out from the pain at best, or die because of it at worst. Even Casca, when she leaves the cave and regains her sanity, is completely unable to keep her composure in Griffith's presence, and the pain from her brand makes her pass out. Guts is unique in this regard as well, as his insane tolerance for pain has seemingly made him immune to the brand's side effects. He can keep fighting on as long as he wants to, especially now that he has the Berserker armor to help him out, but he simply cannot escape the ultimate fate that awaits him, because it's what happens to everyone that gets hit with the brand of sacrifice. There is no escaping the ultimate fate associated with the brand of sacrifice. How Guts' soul is already headed for hell. In the final couple chapters of the Black Swordsman arc, we learn the true reason why Guts is called the ultimate struggler in all of manga. Guts is renowned for his unbreakable spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. He's defeated 100 knights alone. He fought and won against a giant corundum-skinned dragon. He defeated a friggin' thundercloud for an enemy and lived to fight another day. The way he fights, you'd think he's destined to live forever. But the thing is, upon his death, Guts goes to the one place he least wants to, and that's the Abyss. Earlier, we told you that the brand of sacrifice isn't just placed on a person's skin, it's seared into their astral selves, which is the equivalent of the soul in the Berserk verse. Once the bodily flesh is scarred with the symbol, the soul of the sacrificed person becomes linked to the abyss of the astral world, and that's where it ends up post-consumption. Both Guts and Casca are technically destined for hell, and Guts nearly went there during the opening arc of the series itself. After the God Hand summoned the Abyss to try and intimidate the Slug Count, the dead souls within that endless swirl targeted Guts, because he was supposed to be a part of that vortex on principle. They try to drag him along, but a well-placed cannon shot in Femto's direction brings an end to that. This proves that no matter when he dies or by whose hand, once he does, Guts' soul will be dragged to hell. The same goes for Casca because she's the only other branded individual alive in the story. But something that happens right before this also proves that the brand of sacrifice isn't as infallible as it's made out to be. Can you avoid getting the brand of sacrifice? If not, can it be removed? There is a way that a person can avoid getting the brand of sacrifice seared onto their flesh and soul, but it isn't one that they control. As we've established in this video, the fate of the branded individual ultimately befalls them because of someone else's decision. The person who makes the sacrifices decides to go through with sacrificing their loved ones 99.999% of the time. Yet, there is one instance where they refuse it, and the prospective sacrifice ends up surviving with no unintended consequences whatsoever. In the Black Swordsman arc, the Slug Count had already sacrificed his wife to become an apostle once. He had another chance to reincarnate himself after his fight with Guts, only this time he would have to give up his daughter, Tricia. After much contemplation, once he realizes the fate that would befall his child, the Slug Count ends up rejecting the God Hand's offer, and something very interesting happens. The metaphysical poker Void uses to brand sacrifices disappears as soon as Void realizes Slug Count is not going to go through with the ritual, and the God Hand just end up leaving. Slug Count's soul gets dragged into the abyss, and Tricia swears undying revenge on Guts for it. But other than that, the girl remains untouched by demonkind. She does not bear the brand and will not end up swirling in the abyss forever as a damned soul. This is the only known method to evade being branded with the brand of sacrifice. Because the brand is seared onto a person's astral body, it cannot be removed, even if the branded limb is cut off from the person's physical shell, as it would do nothing to change their souls. However, you can dull the effects of the brand by using talisman, and there is evidence that the brand can perhaps be removed entirely, although it's not clear at all. For starters, the brand of sacrifice's effects are practically negated whenever the branded individual enters a space overflowing with positive magic. Casca spent 2 years in Godot's mine, and the only time an apostle showed up there was when Guts was just setting out on his journey. Elfin magic has a surprising dampening effect on the brand's magnetism, and that's not even talking about the talismans we just mentioned. At around the halfway point of the story, Guts meets the witch Flora, who crafts magical talismans to contain the brand of sacrifice temporarily. The duration it works for is about 3 days, and her protege Shirke has to redo them every time they run out. But the only reason Flora settles on this method of negating the brand's powers is because she says she isn't powerful enough to do more about the situation herself. This implies that there is a way to get rid of the brand of sacrifice, we just don't know about it. If someone in the Berserkverse would know about it, it would be Daiba, and incidentally enough, it looks like Guts is going to end up reuniting with him sooner rather than later. That answers most questions people have regarding the brand of sacrifice, but there's still one we haven't answered yet, and it's possibly one of the biggest mysteries in Berserk as well. Why is Void the only one who can give out the brand of sacrifice? Does the brand's position on the sacrifice's body mean something? Throughout the entire series, we've seen the entire God Hand crew get up to some crazy stuff and manipulate world history with their mere presence. But we've only seen one of them impart the brand of sacrifice onto people, and that's Void. Void is the one who performs the Invocation of Doom, and it's quite possible he's the only one who can do that considering he's the first God Hand member. But what does that have to do with anything? Well, we'll give give you our theory. If you've seen any of our Berserk videos, you guys know we think Void is Geiseric's sage. Now, considering that Griffith completed the current God Hand, Void must have been the first of the bunch. Being the first comes with privileges, and Void certainly flaunts them. He can perceive the flow of causality better than the other God Hand members, as evidenced by when he predicted Guts would slash at Femto during the Black Swordsman arc, and later when he predicted Skull Knight would save Guts and Casca from the eclipse. If he was the first God Hand member, he could have been given special jurisdiction over the creation of apostles by his master, the Idea of Evil, which is why he's the only one who can perform the Invocation of Doom. But why is it then that it appears as though Void selectively brands certain people in certain places? During Griffith's eclipse, the entire band of the Falcon is branded on random parts of their bodies, but the bodies underneath the Tower of Rebirth all bear the brand of sacrifice on their foreheads, as if they were mass branded the same way. Given that Void is the one who sacrificed them, it makes sense that he would go straight for the heads of the sinners he was condemning until he died and was reborn. But then, why turn things into random selection later on? Also, why brand the Lady Priestess of Cherry Blossoms, who died during Void's eclipse, on the shoulder instead of her forehead? These are questions we just don't have answers for canonically. Outside of this, we'd say it's probably just a continuity thing. Miura likely made the corpses in the Tower of Rebirth have the brand on their foreheads to signify that they were mass murdered by Void, but then realized it would be a dead giveaway and changed it during the eclipse a few chapters later. Or maybe there's another answer to this that Studio Gaga will end up giving us as they wind up Miura's masterpiece. Marvelous verdict! Other than that last bit though, we think we've pretty much given you guys a thesis on what the brand of sacrifice is and how it works. We only hope it wasn't as boring as a lecture, but let us know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing Berserk content, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep on struggling, strugglers.